only had one strategy for success in my life, and that was to work harder and get smarter.
Thank y'all so much for tuning in to True Grit and Grace. I'm Amberly, and I have a very special guest on today, and we're going to be talking about some really important topics, some of my favorite topics, like how do you prevent burnout? How do you really up-level your emotional intelligence? And how to accelerate your career and love your life? I have the amazing Zach White with us today, and he's got a lifestyle engineering blueprint, and it will really help you build your career and balance your life. He's a game-changing career coach for driven engineers, and he has worked with hundreds of leaders from top companies worldwide to achieve breakthrough career success while avoiding burnout. He also has a top podcast called The Happy Engineer, and I'm so excited I get to be a guest on his show. And he is the founder and CEO at Oasis of Courage. So, Zach, thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome to True Grit and Grace.
I'm so happy to be here, Amberly, and I can't wait to have you on the Happy Engineer podcast. You bring so much that our audience needs to hear as well. So that's going to be amazing to have you on. I hope everybody from your show comes over and listens to that episode to get to know you better as well.
Well, thank you. Your show is amazing. I feel honored to get to be on it. And I'm going to listen to one of your episodes you just released about burnout. And I want to dig in to your story a little bit, because you were like climbing the corporate ladder, like working 80 hours a week. And can you take us to the point where you kind of felt stuck or hit a rock bottom, or thought to yourself, something has got to change. This life has got to be better than this, because maybe it was out of balance. Maybe you were burnt out. Can you take us back to that point? And what
Mhm.
was that defining moment that changed everything for you?
Absolutely. Well, I graduated from Purdue University with my mechanical engineering degree. And for anyone who knows an engineer, we are in some ways a special breed. I get that. I know that. But I loved engineering. I really did. And Amberly, the context that's important to understand, and I think this is not just engineers who struggle with this, is you come out of college, you get that first job, and I only had one strategy for success in my life, and that was to work harder and get smarter. And that worked my whole life, right? You just go to
Yeah.
school. If your grades aren't where you want them, study a little more, put in some time, work harder. My
Mm-hmm.
mom taught me to make sure that I always did my homework before I played video games. Yeah, I learned these basic ideas of what success takes. Just sit and do the work. And you look around at the company and everyone else is putting in these crazy hours. So that must be the way to succeed. And you pick up these beliefs in your life about what it means to be successful, and also what success is. It's promotions, it's paychecks, it's, this life that's on the cover of a magazine somewhere. And so I
Mm-hmm.
got into my career and I just started pursuing that, doing everything that I knew how to do. I got married right out of college and was building that dream life the best way that I knew how. Unfortunately, that strategy, get smarter, work harder, trying to solve every problem with my IQ
Mm-hmm.
and putting in the time, really grinding it out. Well, that only takes you so far. And that one dimensional approach to life led me to a point where I was in Tennessee on a work trip. I was in the factory. I worked at Whirlpool Corporation. I was designing appliances for the consumer market. And I was there. It was a crazy week. To your point, I probably got up, at 6 o'clock in the morning, went straight to the factory, left the factory at 8 or 9 at night the
Mm.
whole week. It was a crazy time. And while it was extremely challenging, Amberly, the other thing is part of me did enjoy it because I thought that this was what it takes. I had this sense
Yeah.
of pride that I was willing to sacrifice, parts of my life to go be somebody at work. And I got back from that trip expecting to come home to my wife and unwind for the weekend. And instead, I walked into an empty house
Oh,
and there was
wow.
a note on the kitchen table that said, "This isn't working." and I think we need to get divorced.
Oh,
And that was the moment where my entire model and paradigm and vision of what I thought was true about my life completely collapsed. The house of cards fell down and I fell down. I mean, I hit the floor and just bawled my eyes out for the first time, probably an emotional bottle up that needed to release for a long time, Amberly. And that was that moment where I realized this isn't working. This, like, my whole idea of what I need to do to be successful is broken. And unfortunately, I did end up divorced, depressed, embarrassed. It's just like, how did I end up here? I was the valedictorian in my high school. I was the guy who got, straight A's in college and crushing it in everything. And everybody told me I was going to be so successful. And here I am. I would have traded it all to just go back and try again. And that was
oh.
where burnout and rock bottom happened for me.
Wow. Well, I relate so much to what you have shared because that's how I grew up. Like if I wanted something, I just had to work hard for it. And I would work and work and work and grind and grind. And that's the grit part of, true grit and grace. But I had to learn to give myself grace. So how did you start to give yourself grace, and go, wait, this is not working. I've got to do something differently, or different because you were working 80 hours a week. Did you have a lot of fear about, well, if I don't work this hard, then I'm not going to have success. The bills won't get paid. Um, and also, where do you think, oh, so this is two-part question, I guess. Where
Mhm.
do you think that came from where you were just, do you feel like you had to prove yourself? Do you feel like there was a time in your life where you felt like you had to be valedictorian and get the straight A's in order to like help with your self-worth? Where do you think it
Mm.
came from?
It's a it's a lot to unpack. So first first thing really quick, I think it's important people understand while I did work long, hard hours, it wasn't every single week that I was there 80 hours. But here's what is true, Amberly. Whether I was physically at the office or not, my mind was always at the office. And I
Oh,
think
that
one
is
of the things
so
I
important to share.
struggled, yeah, like just people get that context, burnout and these things, you might say, oh, I don't work that many hours, or I'm not in that place, I'm not going through what Zach went through. Well, one of those little symptoms that was there years before rock bottom is that I was never really present in my marriage, with my family, with these, I was seeking success with my energy and my mind all the time. And so I think that's a really important little piece of context. But to your, maybe the second question first, like how did that get started? And then, how do you recover? What created the turnaround? I do think it was simply a misunderstanding of a well-intended teaching that started in my childhood. My mom always shared with me, first of all, Zach, school is your job. That was the thing she told me when I was young. I was not allowed to have summer jobs or a job during school at all unless I was doing well in school. We highly valued academics in my household, and that was a great thing. I think education and learning and doing well in school is super important. But the thing that she would say to me is, Zachary, I don't care whether or not you get straight A's. What I care about is that you're always doing your best. And I know and I believe in you that your best is straight A's. And so if you're not getting straight A's, then it's, I'm believing it's because you're not actually doing your best. You're messing around, you're not studying hard, you're wasting your time. So if you manage your time, if you apply yourself, you are capable of straight A's. You're very intelligent. And so what was meant extremely positively, I took on as an identity that I am very intelligent, and therefore I will always do well in these academic domains. And if I'm not doing well, it's because I'm not managing myself or working hard enough.
Mm.
Again, like on the surface seems really innocent. And in school, it was fine because the truth is I didn't have to work 80 hours a week to get straight A's. I actually was blessed, very intelligent. I didn't have trouble in school. College got a little rocky at moments, but I always got through. But I let that singular understanding of My identity is I'm smart. Therefore, in every situation, I need to be seen as smart. And if I ever get into a place where I don't know what to do, or things aren't going my way, or I might fail, that can't happen, Amberly. That, like, failure's not an option,
Yeah.
because a B means that I didn't work hard enough. I
Mm.
always need to get that A. And I didn't extend grace to myself at all.
Mhm.
So again, it's no discredit to my mom. My mom loves me. She raised me so well, but I just, as a kid, took that on and let that belief drive my life in one dimension, in one direction. And it was a one-way street toward burnout. And I didn't know that until it was too late. So that's where it began.
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate to that, and just for the listeners, like, burnout might look different for
Mhm.
others. It might be different for me or than it is for you. For you, you were working all these hours, and you said not in the present, so your mind was always thinking
Yeah.
of work. I've been guilty of that, where I love what I do, and so I had to, like, take some hints and cues from my husband, who was like, he doesn't necessarily care about some of the things that I work on, like the self-development stuff and speaking gigs and or podcast. He doesn't, I don't even think he listens to my podcast. He's just not that, he's not into it.
I get it.
Um but he was a guest on the show once. So I had to really bribe him for that.
That's awesome.
What do you think, what is your definition of burnout?
Hmm. Burnout begins the moment that you're burning energy faster than you're filling the tank.
Oh, so good.
People think of burnout as the rock bottom moment, when you run out of gas. And that's the one that gets all the airtime on social media, is when you really hit these places with challenging consequences. You have a health issue, you get into some sort of chronic pain or disease, you get fired, you completely crash in your ability to show up to your own life, and you end up depressed and anxious and fill in the blank, angry. And yeah, those are burnout. But burnout can also be, you just celebrate, I made it through the week. Thank God it's Friday. My life will never be better than this. At least it's not worse. You just resign yourself to this mediocre default existence. Burnout can be resentment that you feel underpaid, but you don't feel like you can do anything about it. Burnout shows up in so many ways. It can be in a
Mhm.
relationship. I've given up on my spouse, but I'm staying in this unhappy relationship. Like, there's a lot of things that can happen that are symptoms, or the manifestation of burnout in your life. But what I want people to know, and what I wish I had known years before I hit rock bottom, is that burnout is not just the flaming, glorious crash moment. Burnout begins the moment that you're burning fuel faster than you're filling the tank. And you could be on that road right now and not noticing it because you're still in the air. And again, it's burnout, not crash. Crash is the part we want to do everything to avoid.
Mhm.
Burning out is simply that downward trajectory. And that's a really important distinction to make, because you got to ask yourself, not, have I hit rock bottom? That's the wrong question. It's, how is my life today versus 90 days ago? Am I building energy? Am I moving toward my vision? Am I experiencing deeper fulfillment, deeper meaning and joy and love in my relationships and in my work? And am I moving toward the life of my dreams? Or is it flat or down? And if it's either of those, we need to ask, well, what am I doing to create that shift? Otherwise, flat may seem okay to you, but if you're flat, you're losing ground, because the world isn't staying flat. The world around you wants to grow. So if you're flat, you're down in my book. And that's the trajectory mindset. It's like, am I going down or am I going up? If I'm going down, I'm burning out. It's that simple.
Oh, that's so good how you explain things. Well, what did you do when you were like came home, your wife was like, this is not working out, you were getting a divorce. How did you get through that moment? Did you go to therapy? How did you learn to just recover from the way where you were headed.
hmm I did hire a therapist immediately, started digging into my own grief and emotion and all the stuff that I was unwilling to look at for my entire adult life. I hired a coach. I asked for help in how to build my career and do it the right way. I started reaching out to everybody I knew who was a past mentor or had anything to offer in the space. I just constantly started seeking new answers, reconnecting with faith, with family, etc. But Amberly, it really boils down to a couple of key things. And no matter where you're at on the journey of burnout, if you just started going down, or if you're like I was, grinding your face against rock bottom, getting cut up, any place, I think it begins with a couple of key things. The first one is to start telling the truth
That's
to
so
yourself
powerful.
and to someone else. Working with a therapist was powerful because I had someone who I could trust to tell the whole story to, someone that I could
Mhm.
tell the truth to. But Amberly, I also called my sister and my mom, my other sister, and all the people I loved, and I told them what was going on. And it was the first time ever that they knew I even had anything not working in my life or in my marriage.
Mm.
I had been keeping it a secret. And the truth is, my marriage was on the rocks well before she asked me to get divorced. And if I had been honest with myself, I would have known that. But I
Mm.
was pretending that everything was okay. I was believing that I could figure it out on my own. And isolation is the enemy of excellence. So, there's a quote or a scripture in the Bible that talks about how the devil roams around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. And think about that picture of a lion. They don't go after the gazelle that's in the middle of the herd. They
Mhm.
go after that sickly gazelle that's at the edge of the herd, the one that's all alone. That's who they go after. And if you isolate yourself in your pain and in your trauma and in your challenges of life, and you don't tell the truth to yourself and to others and invite people in and ask for help, you're going to get taken out. So, number one thing, tell the truth to yourself and to others. Ask for help. That was the biggest shift in my life. And honestly, you could probably just stop right there. And like, if you'll do that, you're going to see, tremendous transformation begin. But the second thing then was a shift in my focus from just going after this vision of success. And I started turning the lens inward and just said, the most important thing is I need to work on myself. Yeah. Personal development, connecting with my faith, asking for these resources. Like, these problems have been solved before, Amberly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
My coach and my therapist, this is the first time they've had somebody say, my career is burning me out and I'm getting divorced. Like, these are problems a lot of people have faced. And the answers and the solutions are out there. People like yourself providing these incredible resources on a podcast. Like, I got really hungry for a new way of being. And it wasn't so much about the external. I need the next promotion. I need the bigger paycheck. I turn that lens inward and just say, who do I need to become in my emotions, in my approach to life? All these, that shift was huge because as an engineer, I really got focused on the outer world all the time.
Uh-huh.
And I had to turn that around and start focusing on my inner world of transformation. It's an inside out life that we're living. We're spiritual beings in a physical experience. And I had it backwards my whole life.
Mhm.
And so that was huge.
Oh, that is so powerful. And yeah, I was guilty for a long time. I stuffed down so much. I did not process emotions or traumas that had happened and stuffed it down, and then started isolating. It was like the physical pain led to emotional pain, which led me
Mm-hmm.
to addiction. And I think that that's what happens with a lot of people when they don't, when they're not honest, when they don't open up, when they, there's a saying, you're only as sick as your secrets.
Mm,
And in
yeah.
recovery, so I got sober in 2016, and in recovery, one of the first things I learned in a 12-step meeting was stay in the middle, like stay in the middle of the meeting. And so your analogy of like, if you're on the outside getting a little
Yeah.
lonely over here, or you're going to be taken out, Is so true, and I think that when, when we just stuff down, we aren't radically honest with ourselves. Addiction can be anything from becoming a workaholic to
Yeah.
porn to overeating, shopping too much, dating too much. And so
Yeah.
I think that that is powerful that all of you listening can really take a moment to take a good hard look at yourself and how are you really feeling? What's going on in your world? How can you get radically honest with yourself? And one of the things that I love so much, Zach, that you talk about a lot is the importance of a mentor, a coach,
Hmm. Hmm.
therapy, all those things. Because, like you said, sometimes when we're going through something really hard, we think, oh, I'm the only one, that nobody understands my pain or what I'm going through. And I think that whether you're an engineer or any kind of entrepreneur,
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
it can be lonely. And if we just did reach out and get the help that we need, either through a therapist, coach, mentor, mastermind, is so important. But what would you suggest for people to do who are seeking a good coach? Because there are a lot of people out there that say, "Oh yeah, I'm a coach." What would you suggest for people to do to find a good coach?
It's an important question, Amberly. I am a coach, and so I hate to say this about the industry, but there are a lot of really bad coaches and
Oh,
people who
I
have
know.
they have no business calling themselves coaches, and even the term coach is so watered down now that it is hard. And so many people I've spoken to, even in engineering, are incredibly skeptical about working with me and our organization because they've been burned. They've spent a lot of money and had coaches who provided no real value to them. So super important question. Here's here's the first thing. Coaching is not about someone coming in and rescuing you. It's not about somebody who's going to just tell you everything that you need to do. And here's the, ABCs of all of your life. And if you'll just follow my super secret recipe, you're going to be fine. Yes, there's training programs that might teach you the ABC steps of how to be successful marketing on Instagram or how to be successful in your finances in your business. And those are great things. And a lot of times those people call themselves coaches as well, which is part of the confusion. Here's a finance coach. Well, okay, be really clear. There's two different things that you need. You need the knowledge, the how to, and you need the coach, the person who's going to help guide, challenge, hold you accountable, and who believes in you as being healthy, whole, complete, and able to become everything you need to become to accomplish your biggest dreams. And if you become dependent on your coach to rescue you, then that's the wrong kind of relationship. So as I evaluate a coach, I'm feeling that energy of somebody who's here to put wind in my sails and who's believing in me and who's going to challenge me and ask me the hard questions and let me wrestle with growth within myself. And yeah, if they can provide some great knowledge and great tools, and of course, I want that also. But the moment I start to feel like somebody's coming in saying, "Hey, I'm the hero of your story," ooh, like run the other way. Run the other
Mhm.
way. That is not the energy of a great coach. So that's number one. And then number two, frankly, is at this point, there's so many coaches out there. Take your time and go find someone with an incredible track record. Put the challenge onto the new coaches to go create their results first, and then you go work with the seasoned coach. And for all the new coaches out there, I love you. I've been there, and so we can talk separately about how to go build those testimonials and results. But that's on us as the coaches to go
Mhm.
prove to ourselves and to the world that we know exactly how to help guide. But if you're somebody looking for a coach, go find someone who's got the results. There's so many amazing coaches to work with. Don't go with somebody who can't show you, hey, here's Sally, who I helped transform from A to B. Here's Zach, who I helped recover from burnout and build this incredible career in business. Go find somebody who has results.
That's so important. Yeah. Because there are a lot of people out there that claim to be I'm this top coach and they charge thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, it's not, and they might be really good at selling you the program, but I mean, I've paid a lot of money for a coach before who I didn't do my homework. I just kind of believed what they said. And I was very surprised when I got into the program, like, wait a minute, what is going on? So after that, it was a very expensive lesson for me, but I do my homework and I check in and go, okay, what results does this person really have? And how can they
Mhm.
help me? That's so
Mhm.
important. How long did it take for you to really start to transform your life to where you weren't completely consumed with work, work, work all the time?
Well, one of the perks of hitting rock bottom is you're willing to change quickly because
Mhm.
life's not working.
Yeah.
I
There's a
I
gift in
do
desperation.
yeah, exactly, exactly. While I would never wish for someone to go through what I went through or whatever life challenge you might be facing, if you're out there listening right now and you have a totally different story, we love you. I understand, like, everybody's story is unique.
Mhm.
But the thing is, when you're really in it, when you hit that rock bottom and you're desperate, you're willing to change fast. And so the truth is, Amberly, it took longer to heal than to change, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So the grief, the the pain of facing my own stuff and realizing that I didn't have it all together. There's a saying that a bad day for your ego is a good day for your soul. And I was in that place. My ego was getting hammered, like, oh, I'm not as smart as I think I am. I don't have it all put together like I thought I did. I'm not perfect. In fact, I'm quite broken. That was the slower process of just really healing my heart and forgiving myself for having gotten into that place.
Mhm.
I felt a lot of shame about my life. I got divorced. Amberly, that's the last thing I ever wanted. Quick little aside here. The reason that moment really, really, really hurt is because when I was 13, the day after Christmas, my mom came home to our house with all three of us kids in the house, but my dad was gone, and she walked up to her bedroom to a note that he wanted to leave our family, and my parents got divorced. And so I had this wound from childhood that came back as an adult because you can imagine this embarrassment, like the thing that hurt me most as a kid that I said I would never do.
Mhm.
I would never get divorced because I hated divorce because my dad, I mean, I had my story about why it was the worst thing in the world. And then it happened to me. That part took a lot of time
Yeah.
to change the way that I showed up at work, to start drawing a new boundary about, hey, I'm out of here. Like it's quitting time and I need to go focus on my personal development and my growth and my faith and my family. That was relatively easy to do
Yeah.
because I was hungry for a different life. And so I think it's important to recognize that transformation is two things. It's the breakthrough. That's what happened when I said, I'm no longer going to do it this way. I'm going to do it a new way. I'm not
Mhm.
working 80 hours. I'm going to work 40 or 45 hours and go home and focus on myself. That was a breakthrough for me. It was a completely new way of being that was impossible for me before, and it was possible for me now. That was the first piece. But transformation also requires repetition and leaning in and staying committed to that new lifestyle over time. And that's where that healing and inner work really was important because it's simple to do it once when you're fired up or you're motivated or you
Yeah.
come back from the conference or you go through the desperate event. It's hard to do it 6 months later and a year later and permanently.
Oh, that's so important to share. It is about being consistent. And,
Mhm.
for me, I remember, and you talk about shame. I had so much shame because I thought I was a hard worker and successful and was always focused on my career. And then when I was stuck in a hospital bed and I couldn't run from my feelings and then couldn't get out of pain and I started drinking to numb out my pain, And I thought, oh my gosh, how did a good girl like me end up here? I had
Yeah,
so much shame because I promised myself I would never become addicted to anything like that. You know what
of
I mean?
course. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I had so much shame. And shame is so heavy. How did you
Mhm.
process the shame and start to heal from the shame? I mean, you talked about forgiveness, but how did you start to let go of that?
Yeah. It begins with bringing it into the light.
Mm,
And, shame is one of those things we keep in those deep, dark closets of our heart. We don't want to pull it out because it just sucks. It hurts.
mhm,
There's nothing fun at all about holding your shame out in front of you consciously in the light, looking at it for what it is, and being willing to share it with someone like we've talked about. You talk about it with your therapist, or to, I
mhm.
say, be fully known with the people I love, to say like, hey, here's something, I'm ashamed of this. And that's not fun to talk about, especially because you've got Brene Brown and all these people saying shame is forget shame, we don't need to live in shame. So like, we almost shame our shame, right? It's like, I'm ashamed
Yeah,
that I have shame.
yeah.
So it's a very strange catch 22 we find ourselves in. And what we tend to do is keep it hidden away in those deep, dark places. So if you want to heal from shame, we need to bring it into the light, because once you actually see it for what it is, it starts to lose its power on you. It
Mhm.
loses its grip. It's just like at the haunted house when the lights are off and the noises are loud and crazy. It's super scary. But if you just went in the daytime with all the lights on and you walked through and you turn off the loud music, it's actually no big deal.
That
Right.
is
And
the
now you
best
can go clean
analogy
it up.
I have never
Yeah,
heard that before. That is the best way
for sure.
to look at it. So good, Zach.
Yeah,
That's amazing. I love that.
it really is. I mean, think somebody put all that garbage in the haunted house. That person wasn't freaked out while they were doing it. Why? Well, because you're holding the skeleton in your hand. You know what it is. You know it's fake. It's no big deal. You hang it up. But other people come through and they see it. They get scared. And so it's just that idea. So it starts with that. Bring it into the light. How do you do that? Again, you work with a therapist. Have the hard conversation. If you're not ready to do that, grab your journal and just start writing it down. Be totally honest with yourself. I tell my clients, look, write down the thing that you're embarrassed to write down, the thing that you never want to say out loud, but it's in there. And
Mhm.
I'll tell you an example for me. When I was going through a really hard time in my business, I thought for sure I was going to run out of money and have to go back and get a job again. Well, I got my journal out and started writing. And next thing you know, I'm saying, like, I'm going to run out of money. I'm going to be totally broke. I'm going to have to get a job as a UPS truck driver. And it's going to be terrible. Like, it's like, I have 2 engineering degrees and so much success in my life. And here I am freaking out that I'm going to end up as a UPS driver, which no shame if you are one. I mean, it's an amazing thing. But it's just how funny that the mind goes crazy. It picks out these. And then you look at what you wrote down. It's like, huh, that's kind of strange. None of that is actually true. It's just
Mhm.
stuff going on in my head. And so bring it into the light and then recognize that thoughts are just thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are a being who thinks. And many of the thoughts that you're thinking aren't even true. In fact, a lot of them are not true. And when you realize that the shame is just a pattern of thought, and it's
Mhm.
not yours unless you choose to claim it. And so just let it go. Thoughts are thoughts. It's no big deal. You had a thought, you had a shameful thought. Let's start releasing and letting that go. And there's a lot of tools for that. Your coach can help you, your therapist can help you, but it's about separating our identity from this thought. So we got to pull it out of the shadow into the light, and then we need to let it go. And while that sounds super easy for me to say, I absolutely respect that it's not that simple, and it takes deep work, and we call it mindset work for a reason, right, Amberly? It's
Uh-huh.
like it's real work. But in principle, it is that simple. It's not easy to do, but it is simple. And let it be simple and do the work, and you'll experience the same turnaround and transformation that I did.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, when I got sober, um, I talked to a therapist. I talked to a sponsor,
Yeah.
and one of the exercises is you put down all of your defects. You write them down,
Yes.
and then you talk to someone about it. And I think that's very powerful because you talked about writing it down. There's something very healing about writing. And I used to journal every single day, and I kind of got out of the habit of journaling. And one of my really good friends is a coach, and it's awesome when you have a good friend that is a coach. I'm like, yeah, just coach me all day, you know. And he called me out on some kind of things that I had said that he picked up on that weren't very positive, and it just was kind of like stories I was telling myself. And
Yeah.
so he
Yeah.
suggested that I wake up and write every single day, like a whole page on all the things that I'm proud of myself for,
Mm.
like whether
So
it's
good.
like, you know, I did a TEDx and they didn't boo me off stage. I didn't write that in, but I just did all the things that I am proud of. And I've been doing this, and he's like, yeah, it takes like 66 days to really create a habit, break a habit, and form a new one. And just getting in that habit of writing again, because I do a gratitude, like a list, I do a gratitude
Yeah.
list every
Awesome.
day, but that's through an app. And so it's different typing on your phone, doing your
Mhm.
gratitude versus actually writing it out. So I think that's really important. A good way to start for people is to journal and write it out,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
find someone who you can trust if you can't afford a therapist, who's someone that you can really trust, who can hold space for you so you can talk to that person. Um, and it's also helpful to know that here you are so successful that you've actually had those thoughts before of, oh my gosh, I'm going to run
Yeah.
out of money.
Exactly.
What am I going to do? Because when I first got started with, my whole new career after I lost my other career, I would ask myself, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay bills? And then my husband would say stuff like, when are you going to start making money at this? When are you, and so, and so I was like, okay, what can I do? And it does help to journal and be able to talk to somebody. So thank you for sharing that with
Mhm.
us. I
Mhm.
want to ask you, how did you get started with this, your lifestyle engineering blueprint? And can you give us a little bit of what that looks like?
Absolutely. So I was in engineering, building my career, and of course, crashed and burned. You already heard that part of the story. Well, the fun part of the story, there is a happy ending there, is doing that work, turning the lens on myself, focusing on my growth, etc., and asking for help. I started to discover a new way to approach my life, foundationally changing my mindset in big ways. The way that I approached life, complete 180, and started to pick up new strategies about what it really takes to accelerate success while maintaining balance, and how to be present and all these things. Well, all those little distinctions, those little learnings, and building new habits and implementing new systems in the way that I approached my life, and using my engineering strengths where they actually served me, and building, and kind of shoring up on the weaknesses of emotional intelligence and these other areas, social intelligence, where I was struggling. And my career exploded. I started to see tremendous success. I doubled my income. I had 5 promotions in 5 years, and everything was going my way. I was happy, Amberly. I was fulfilled. I was loving the process. I found an amazing woman who I am now married to, named Johanna, and I had a wonderful relationship. So many things going my way. And Amberly, when you go through that kind of a transformation, the people around you start to notice, and they
Hmm.
start asking you questions like, what happened? What are you doing now? How did you get these opportunities? You're leaving at 5 o'clock and you're the one getting the promotions. Everybody else is here till 6 or 7 and they're not. Like, what are you doing differently than what other people are doing? And when they asked, I would sit down and start sharing with them about what I went through. And people would say, I want to know more. Well, can you help me with this? And so, well, this is super interesting. I think I'd like to go do some coach training for myself so that I can coach these engineers, these other leaders who are asking me all these questions. I've taken so much value from coaching. I'd love to be able to give in coaching as well. And that began, I didn't realize it at the time, but it began this journey towards curating and distilling my lifetime of failure and newfound success into a model, into the blueprint. Well, here's how I did it. And you can do it too. And these are the fundamentals, these are the principles, these are the tools. And there was a point in 2019 where I took a weekend for what I call solitude and silence. It's fasting, so I'm just drinking only water. I don't do any reading or any podcasts or anything. I just take a blank journal, a bottle of water, and disappear for 3 days to
You
go
do? How
listen.
often do
Yeah.
you do that?
Well, in full solitude and silence, about once a year, but the 3 days of fasting every quarter is
You
something I do.
do?
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that to me it's incredibly important to me to have a time of resetting my physical body and then my mental and spiritual side as well, right? Just to clear out the inputs and listen to God for what I need to be doing next. And it's easier to do that. You find so much clarity when you turn off all the other noise.
Oh,
And
that's
that's both
so important.
physical and mental, spiritual. So if you've never tried fasting, it's something super powerful. Of course, consult your physician. I'm not here, I'm not qualified to be your doctor, but I think it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. So I was in one of those trips. I had this epiphany download, Amberly. It's like a whole nother podcast for us, like where I realized my purpose in life was not to be an engineer, that I had been called into engineering and to go through what I went through, not to go be a successful engineer, but to go back into that domain and help other engineers to avoid the pain that I experienced and to help them create a life that they could get really excited about and love that does have more income and more success and more impact through their career, which is a part of what they deeply desire, but without the burnout, without the pain and the challenges that come with doing that the wrong way. And so I went home and told my wife, I said, "Hey, I have this idea. I want to walk away from an incredibly successful career and a
Wow.
trajectory that was, I mean, I was moving up and to the right, Amberly. Like it was just a matter of time before director or, senior director VP roles were available to me. But once you know your calling and your purpose, you have to take the leap. You have to take the leap. I mean,
Yeah.
don't wait. Don't
Yeah.
wait. There's no, yeah, I'll just pause it. So I did, and she supported me from day one. It was amazing, and it was hard. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush at all. Just because I knew what I needed to do did not make it easy. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. And every time one of my clients turns around and says, "Zach, thank you. This, and this is totally different in my life now because of doing this work." It's just one more little tally in the it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. And that's where I'm at.
Oh, that's incredible. So, do you work with other people besides engineers or only engineers?
I do have clients who are outside of engineering, but the truth is, Amberly, while the blueprint itself is universal, like I really do believe anyone on the planet can get tremendous value from this idea we call lifestyle engineering. But I am uniquely qualified to speak into the life of somebody who works in engineering or
Mhm.
a technical career field. They're in IT, they're a scientist, a mathematician, because our mind is wired the same way,
Yeah.
and we think a lot of the same thoughts, and we get stuck in a lot of the same places. And so someone who's on the total opposite end of the personality spectrum or their experiences in career and life are very different. It's not that we wouldn't be able to help them or that the blueprint is not relevant, but it's like, in a way, we're all playing the same song when it comes to personal growth and development, Amberly, but we speak it in different frequencies.
Mhm.
It's just like your radio in your car. And for those, in the old days, you could turn a dial on your radio. If you're young, you don't even know what I'm talking about, but it's like you turn the dial. Well, you would tune in to a certain
Uh-huh.
frequency,
Yeah.
107.1. And on that frequency, you could hear a song.
Mhm.
But while your radio could tune into any frequency at once, you can only hear one at a time. And so I speak on the frequency that an engineer can really tune into and experience growth. Other coaches speak the same kinds of principles and ideas, but it's not going to resonate with an engineer because it's coming in at a different frequency.
Yeah.
And so I just think for me, that's why I focus there, is because I'm really able to speak their language and be with them.
Yeah. I love how I'm a very visual person, and the way you speak, I get a whole picture. Like the way you describe things is so awesome. You're so awesome. I wanted to ask you about your Oasis of Courage.
Mm,
Well, where did you get that name? That's one of the questions I wanted to ask is how
sure.
did you think I'm going to call this Oasis of Courage?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned after my divorce, I did a lot of personal development work and I hired a coach. Well, that coach, the very first coach I hired after going through that rock bottom experience, one of many things we did together was spent several sessions digging into life purpose, which seems like such a big, gnarly thing to tackle. But the truth is, when you're guided well, you know more about your reason for being on this earth than you think you know. And so my coach guided me through some amazing visualizations and some different work to help me uncover this sense of purpose in my life. And keep in mind, Amberly, I'm still doing engineering at the time. I didn't have my business. I wasn't a coach yet. Well, during that coaching session, I wrote down a life purpose statement that has not changed a single word since that day.
Well,
And it's
what
this:
is it?
I am an oasis along life's journey that gives you courage to walk on. That sentence, that statement to me has guided my entire life since that point. And what I love more than anything, even when I was in engineering and even more so today as a coach, is to be a part of encouraging you to place courage into your life so that you have what you need to face the fear that's holding you back to take that next step. And to me, there's no greater gift you can give someone than to share from your reserves of courage
Mhm,
and give that courage to someone who needs it, to encourage them
mhm.
and then see them advance, to take ground towards their goals and dreams. It's like the coolest thing ever to me.
It's the best. It's so fulfilling when you get to do that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's
like
like,
for me, I get to work with women in a mastermind, and it's my favorite
yeah.
thing that I get to do. And I mean, I get to speak on some incredible stages that I am so grateful for. But when I get to encourage these women and I see them start their podcast, or they go
Exactly.
on stage, or they start a coaching business, or it is so fulfilling.
Mhm.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, Amberly, we are brother, sister in this thing. And I think lots of people understand exactly what we're talking about. So, when I started the company and I just said, well, what am I really doing? What is this really about? Why am I doing this? And I realized, well, you know what? This is the embodiment of my purpose in the world for me. So I might as well take this exact idea that I've been living into for years now and just make it the brand, because that's why I'm here. I want to be an oasis of courage for you and for every engineer who I support and everybody I run into all day every day. If I can put my head on the pillow at night and say I showed up as an oasis of courage for the people I interacted with, it was a good day. I don't care if I lost money. I don't care if I failed, if my podcast has no listeners. Like, if the people I had a chance to talk to were blessed and encouraged, then I win. And so that's why I picked Oasis of Courage for the company. We made it OACO for short because it's a mouthful to say Oasis of Courage. But I'm really proud of it.
I love that. And you know what? I know we're running out of time. I had 2 pages of questions to ask you, and I haven't even looked down at my little notebook here. I could listen to you all day. Just
Oh, thank
your
you.
everything that you share is so amazing. Um, if if there's just some encouragement that you could offer someone who's like, wow, this has been eye opening. I think I'm on that trajectory of burnout. I didn't look at it
Mhm.
as how, Zach has described it as maybe it's my marriage, my health isn't doing great, or whatever it may be,
Mhm.
or they're consumed with just work, 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 and they're not being in the present moment.
Right.
Um, what is some encouragement you could offer, or if there's just one piece of advice you could say for them to start to transform their life right away? What would you say?
Yeah. When we talk about burnout, most people want to look at what you're doing and blame or assign the cause of your burnout to those things. Zach, you're working too many hours. That's your problem. You need to stop working so much. Amberly, you're not exercising and you're eating too many high fat foods. You need to change your diet.
Mhm.
So we look at these things. Well, burnout is accelerated by what you're doing, but burnout is caused by what you're not doing. This is a really important shift to make. If you notice that downward trajectory in any area of your life, rather than looking at the things that are filling your calendar and the actions that you are taking and trying to figure out which one is the cause, I want you to ask yourself, what have I stopped doing? What is not on my calendar that I know keeps me healthy, balanced, happy, energized, fulfilled? And you know what it is. I'm not sleeping enough. I've started staying up late watching too many movies. I'm not eating nutritious foods. I need to work on my diet. Great. I'm not spending quality time with the people I love and letting them fuel me and energize me and just sharing experiences and memories with the people who I need to spend time with. I'm not taking time to myself to read and learn and allow myself to reflect. Like, just ask yourself, trust your intuition. You're going to know. Don't look at what you're doing. Ask yourself, what am I not doing that when I do it, it keeps me healthy, happy, whole, balanced, fulfilled? Maybe it's yoga. I used to go to the yoga studio 3 times a week. I stopped going. I'm too busy. Okay. If you just do one thing, I want you to ask that question and make a commitment to yourself to putting that thing back on your calendar as the first thing, first in priority. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the first thing when you wake up in the morning. It doesn't mean it's going to occupy more time than the other stuff on your calendar. In fact, it rarely ever will. We have a lot of commitments and things we need to do. I'm asking you to just put it on the calendar first and then make everything else on your calendar figure out its way around that thing. So
Mhm.
if yoga happens at 2 in the afternoon and that's the only time you can do it, find a way to get there. Like, give yourself the gift of letting yourself be first on that one thing. And that's it. Everything else you can just leave alone. And here's the cool part, Amberly. If you'll just put that on first, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And something on your calendar is going to drop off.
Mhm.
But it's that thing at the bottom that didn't need to be there anyway. Always, 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 it works out just fine. I can't tell you how many times my clients have said, Zach, I don't know how I'm ever going to fit that in. I'm already so busy. It's like, look, just trust me. Take that hour to yourself next week and go do the thing. Take that one night and go out with your buddies and have a great time. I promise you it's going to work. And every single time they get to the end of the week, and guess what? They're still alive. Everything got done. They're totally fine and they feel a little bit better. So, what are you not doing that you know you should be doing if you want to stay healthy, happy, whole, and fulfilled? Commit to putting that on your calendar first next week. Make everything else fall in line around it. Start there. That's all you need to do.
Oh, that's so good. I had to do that. I was letting little things slide. Like I was like, oh, I missed my workout, or oh, I didn't, do my meditation, or oh, I skipped the journaling. And I had to figure out what my non-negotiables are. Like, what are
That's
the
right.
things that if I need these things in my life, or I start to feel overwhelmed
Yeah.
or not good or not as
And keep
healthy.
it, small and simple, Amberly, right? It's like sometimes people say, okay, I'm going to change everything in my life. I'm going to start meditating and journaling, and I'm going to do this and this and this. And you pick 20 things, and it's too much. Just pick one small, simple thing. I've stopped meditating. I used to meditate. I loved it. I've stopped. Okay. Next week, 3 days, 20 minutes, 10 minutes. Keep it small, simple, and just start.
Oh, you're so incredible. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're so
You're,
nice to me. I
oh
really
my
appreciate
gosh. No, you are
that.
incredible. I could listen and learn from you all day. Um, how can people get a hold of you? What's the best way for them to connect with you, listen to
Yeah.
your podcast, and find out more about you?
Well, certainly if you want to listen to the podcast, wherever you're listening to this incredible show, True Grit and Grace, go over and search The Happy Engineer. You'll find me there. Give me a follow, and I really appreciate anybody who wants to tune in. But if this conversation deeply resonates with you, and you are in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and you want to get connected deeply about the work that we do, just as a thank you for tuning in and investing your time into this conversation with me and Amberly today, I would love to gift you free coaching and to help you build that roadmap to the next level for you. Whether you choose to work with us or not, it's a gift we want to give. And so if that's interesting to you, just grab your phone and send me a text message. We have a really simple system. You text the word lifestyle. It's just one word, lifestyle, to the number 55444. That only works in the US. So if you're outside the US, go over to my podcast and we have a link where you can get access to this in a different way. But if you're here in the US and you want to get some free coaching on how to build your career and balance your life, text the word lifestyle to 55444 and we'll hook you up.
Oh, that's awesome. And we have that in the show notes. So if y'all are driving or on a run and you didn't have a chance to write that down, but I think it's pretty easy to remember, lifestyle to 55444.
You got it. You nailed it.
And you know what, y'all? Go ahead, take a screenshot. Whether you're on watching this on YouTube and you can see how he looks, he is like a picture of health. You glow. Or you're listening on, Apple, Spotify, wherever you're listening, take a screenshot and tag me, Amberly Lago Motivation, and tag Zach at Zach White. And when I see that, I always share it in my story. But also head over to the Happy Engineer podcast and take a listen. Go subscribe. And yeah, Zach, you're amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. And I can't wait to talk to you again when I'm on your podcast. So
Oh,
thank
I'm
you.
super jazzed. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And Amberly, I just want to say thank you to you, acknowledge you for this incredible work. Your podcast is incredible. You bring so much value into the world for your listeners, and it's a real privilege to be a part of it. So thanks for the invitation.
Oh, thank you. And thank y'all so much for tuning in. I will see you next week.